Good morning, everybody, and thanks so much for joining us for this exciting discussion. As Danielle said, we're here to speak about partnership opportunities, global partnership opportunities, to address this issue of the fourth industrial revolution, which is affecting the entire world. In particular, in this panel, we're going to look at opportunities. We're in Harlem, we're looking at Silicon Harlem, but we're also looking at Africa and partnership opportunities with Africa. And with us today, we really have a distinguished panel of experts from very different backgrounds, amazing experience. And so I'm going to encourage you guys also to have to think of some questions after you've heard their interventions. But without further ado, I'm going to introduce them because we don't have a lot of time and I really want to hear from them also. So starting on my left, we've got Heath, who's the global lead for the B2B Institute at LinkedIn. Next to her, we have, thank you very much. Next to her, we have Nieuwoudt, who is the VP of Product Development and Innovation at Mastercard Labs, who is a fellow South African, I might add. And next to her, we have Jean-Victor Nkolo, who is a senior advisor at the United Nations with over 30 years of experience in peace and security matters, also including within the continent. So wonderful to have all of them. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to, often when we think about the African continent, the first thing that comes to mind is a continent where that requires assistance and requires help. But actually, in the space of the fourth industrial revolution, we've seen a lot of innovation, appropriate innovation taking place within Africa. And a lot of partnership opportunities can come from that. So my first question to you, all panelists, is what have you seen develop and what do you think could come up as potential partnership opportunities from your explorations within the continent? Ty, should we start with you?
Sure. Oh, there we go. All right, so just a little bit more background on my experience. So again, B2B Institute, we are a think tank inside of LinkedIn that comes up with strategies for growth and marketing, partnering with academic researchers. So that's one of the things I'm focused on. One of the other things that's really near and dear to my heart is understanding what's called LinkedIn's economic graph and how that can be used to help people make decisions for investment opportunities. So how many people here know what the economic graph is? Anyone know? Okay, great. Oh, I get to teach something new today. Okay, so LinkedIn's mission is to bring economic opportunity to the world's professionals. And one of the ways that LinkedIn expresses this is through what's called the economic graph. So the economic graph is on the platform, it's a map of all of the different world jobs that are available. It's a map of companies. It's a map of different institutions, educational institutions, the skills that are required to get the jobs, and then you have the network and all of the different conversations that are taking place on the platform. So because of the data that we have, we can actually see opportunity flows. So we can see what skills are on the rise, what skills are on the decline, where jobs are moving. And so that's what we've been taking a hard look at. And through public and private partnerships, we can then help people understand, well, where are the different places to invest? So a little background there, and we do that in partnership with the World Economic Forum and the UN as well, to provide that further insight. So in terms of opportunities I see on the continent, really the sky's the limit. I went to a National Black MBA conference 2 years ago, and there were senior officials that were visiting from various nations in the African continent, and they said, we would love to see more Black Americans investing in the continent. And so I started to look into it. And what I saw, there's a massive infrastructure development taking place. So if infrastructure is your passion, if supply chains is your passion, if consumer goods is your passion, if mobile and digital technology is your passion, there are a number of different ways to plug in. I'm seeing solar technology. I'm seeing folks investing in alternatives to Uber. So SafeBoda, for example, is an Uber technology for motorbikes, for people able to do that. I'm seeing a lot of pay-as-you-go technology. So I think it's a matter of thinking about what you're passionate about and how to plug into that. Take a look at some of the work LinkedIn's doing around the data to help you see what skill requirements are on the rise for the various countries. I'm happy to share a link because you can actually do a search on a specific country and get information on the job skills, how the market is divided, and that can provide you some foundation to do that.
So go there and link it to your passion, basically. All right, great. Nina.
Thank you. I just want to add on to that, and I'm not sure how many of you have actually been to Africa, and I talk about Africa as the entire continent, okay? Do yourself a favor and book your next holiday there. You will be surprised. It's beautiful, it's surprising, and you're probably going to meet probably the warmest people you'll ever meet ever. Okay, it's just, and I'm not saying the rest of the world is bad. Okay, you'll probably just really be surprised. Africa has got so much to offer. Whether you're going to South Africa, which is obviously home for me, love it, so need to promote that a bit. But whether you're going to any of the other countries as well, they just have. It's an experience and you should be there. And with that comes challenges as well. Africa is not without its challenges. However, nothing remains a challenge for long. They embrace it and they find a way to work around it. And I often find that when people go, oh, you've come from a developing country to a developed country, how different is that? And I generally go, and I have to pick on it, is the banking sector. And I go, I am generally surprised that you guys call us developing versus developed, yet in many ways it feels as if we are 20 or maybe even 25 years ahead. My classic story is when I moved to the US 5 years ago, I arrived here, went to my bank, and they went, hey, can we order you a checkbook? And I was, no. And I can't actually even remember when last I'd written a check in South Africa. And off I went on my merry way, and a week later I sort of came walking back into the bank with my tail very much between my tails, and the friendly lady looked at me, she went, oh, you foreigners also know, but I ordered you checkbooks anyway. And she gave me like a shoebox full of checkbooks. And I wanted to die. I was like, how long do you think I'm going to be with you? And she went, oh no, you'll use them all. And I was like, not a chance. Well, let me tell you, I fly through that faster than what I fly through a notebook. Because if it's not the school going, hey, we need $5 for this, can you send it in a check? Or, hey, we need you to give a check for this. Or, hey, we need you to pay your utilities with a check for the first 3 months. It's just really surprising. Okay, the next thing which really surprised me about the banking system as well, got here, and in South Africa everybody uses electronic banking. And if I met you right now and you said, Nina, pay me, I'd go, sure, and I'd just go onto my mobile app and off I would pay you, and you would see the money immediately. So the first time I thought I was doing electronic banking, 2 days later the person said, I still haven't got your payment, maybe you should just give me a check. And I was like, no, we use electronic banking, people. And then I phoned the bank and they went, oh, let me explain to you. Electronic banking here means you are sending me an email telling me to write a check, which I will then post to the person. And I was like, what? So I always go, do not be concerned, do not be deterred by the fact that they call it a developing country, okay? There's a whole lot happening there. When they see a problem, they work around it, they come up with solutions. And some of those solutions are very, very relevant even in a developed world. So if you're looking out there for an opportunity and you're maybe not going, let me just develop it in an Africa country, go there and see what you can bring to a developed country. You will be surprised.
Victor.
Thank you so much. So I would like to give you a few benchmarks on the way towards Africa as we discuss this important subject. I joined the UN 26 years ago, but before that, I was a broadcaster and a correspondent. As I was telling one of our sisters, I covered the war in Ethiopia and Eritrea between the Eritreans, the Tigrayans, and the Derg regime in Addis Ababa. And in the mid-80s, when I traveled to Khartoum in Sudan, the most reliable way for me to file my reports back to Bush House at the BBC in London was to go to the Acropole Hotel. That was the only place that had a telex machine. 1985, I was still relying on a telex machine. And then when I moved down deeper in the field, I go to Orota, to Nakfa, or other places, I cross borders, I worked with a Nagra tape recorder. That's about 20 or 15 pound equipment, and I had to use crocodile jacks when I find a telephone line. So I'll climb a pole or something, and I will put the crocodile jacks and try to reach London to send a voice report. Fast forward, after I joined the UN, I worked 14 years ago in the Kasai, the diamond producing area. Well, in that place, many people have never ever seen a landline telephone, but everybody had a cell phone. So they made an extraordinary leap in my own lifetime. They have never seen what you call a real telephone, but they can all use a cell phone. Mm-hmm. This is a part of the world. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is a subcontinent that is as large as Western Europe, but very few or no roads in some areas. So, fast forward. I was in Cameroon 3 days ago. What did I see? We are trying to raise money for the funeral of a former classmate, and all that was done through cell phones. So we went to the market, trying to find out how we can buy flowers for the funeral, and market women tell us, oh no, just pay me by phone. I don't want your cash. Cash is not good here in the market. So we pay them by using the phone. So this is the thing. If today you are involved in information technology, you are involved in communications, or you invest in the modern age, if you have not yet bought your ticket, or you have not yet thought of investing in Africa, you are missing the train. Why? Because the African continent is the most promising land today. First, the youth dividend. It happens to be, and people may criticize that, and I do not want to be politically correct, that, well, in Africa, people are still making a lot of babies. So the population is very young, very enterprising, very well informed. I see young people who know all young people here in Harlem know and more, because they discover that by their own imagination. They are very creative. And you now have some young African people who are now developing some apps or some equipment that are very useful for health or for agriculture and other economical ventures. So the youth dividend, the demographic dividend in Africa, and the fact that the African continent will have the largest and more promising consumer population in the next 25 to 50 years, I will tell you, Vietnamese have understood this. If you go to some African countries, you will see Vietnamese competing with Chinese and so on. But those who will be more welcome than others by the African population are you. They are from here, they are from this place, for all kinds of reasons that would be very long to explain. History, politics, colonial history, the slave trade, and so on. Because while young African people have been developing an acquaintance and a knowledge, an extraordinary knowledge of information technology and the new tools and so on, they have also developed a kind of nationalist view of the world. They are patriotic, they are pro-African. And I believe that a South-South cooperation, or a cooperation between the African diaspora or the Greater South with the African continent, is more promising to them than what they've seen so far, whether it is with former colonial powers or the new, what we call the new emerging economies, such as China, India, and so on. So Africa is really the promise for tomorrow. Don't miss that train. Catch it up now. Thank you.
There's your tweet right there. So I want to go back to you, Ty. And I mean, you're with LinkedIn, the premier platform for connections. So if anyone needs to know about connections besides Tinder, you guys are the ones, perhaps. Different kind of connection. But tell us, what are some of the ways that we can use our connections through LinkedIn and other platforms and in the real life connections to make a contribution to the world in Africa, but also beyond? How do we do this?
Oh, yeah, no worries. Oh, right. Okay, so to the point you made and the point you made, I think it's so important to actually go there. So there's nothing like face-to-face, right? There's nothing like face-to-face connection, but technology can augment the power of a relationship. It allows you to keep in touch with people. And when you think about what are people doing when they're on social? There are different social networks. When people are on LinkedIn, they have a professional mindset. They're there to invest, they're there to network, they're there to learn, they're there to up-level. And when I talked about the economic graph, LinkedIn's goal is to provide all of the things at your fingertips that you need to get from point A to point B. So right now what I see is there's a network gap that we can fill. So fundamentally, I think our community, so people of color, and then including like the broader diaspora of people, we could be more well connected. And I see LinkedIn being a key tool for us to do that. And the way that LinkedIn's investing in that right now is with something called the +1 Pledge. And that is to recognizing the fact that we most often tend to connect with people that are immediately around us, people that are in the same circles, and what that results in is those people in the circle getting access to the same opportunities, and then folks who are not connected to the network wealth missing out on those opportunities. So the +1 Pledge is a commitment, and if you search for +1 Pledge online, you'll be able to read about it. It's a commitment for those of us that have networks to open our networks to others, to add someone who you maybe wouldn't necessarily connect with or don't know very well, with the interest of getting to know more about them, to give of your time, to give of your network, and to offer your skills. And so I took this on personally. So I went to the African continent for the first time last year after going to the National Black MBA Conference and learning about the opportunity. I said, I have to go. And so I went to Accra, I went to Nairobi, and I went to Tanzania. And my goal was learn about as many projects, people, entrepreneurial projects, can connect with as many people as possible. So I'm going back again this year, but this time with a different mindset, because I've been keeping in touch with folks from Accra now over the whole course of this past year. I've been seeing what they're working on, they've been seeing what I'm working on, and we've been collaborating through technology. So my mind is far more open about what's possible. And so when you go to the continent, I cannot say this enough, connect with as many people as you can, because then you can see what they're up to and keep in touch. And then invest in your own personal brand on LinkedIn. Because when people search your name, one of the things that happens most often, if you have a LinkedIn profile, it is the #1 result. So the question is, what story are you telling? And when people from the continent or wherever are reaching out, they can learn a little bit more about you, and that provides those connection points. So I would advise that.
I do want to go on to Nina, but first of all, Tai, I mean, we're speaking really about, these interpersonal connections, but I imagine also when we're talking about these massive growth opportunities and the demographic dividend here with young people and
right.
everything, something that could be very beneficial that LinkedIn can provide to many African countries also is, what skills are demanded because people are advertising jobs, and you also know what skills are available because people are filling in their LinkedIn profiles. How are you using this for the African continent or beyond?
Yeah, absolutely. So it goes back to the economic graph initiative. And feel free to connect with me. I'll share with you a link on where to find the website. So with these public-private partnerships, we are investing in information to help companies, governments decide where to invest, to create opportunities for the future. What people often talk about is what jobs are being lost. So there's a lot of talk about automation taking jobs, robots taking our jobs. What we're not talking about as much that we should be talking about is where jobs are being created. Because if we can get a handle on where jobs are being created, we have a window of time. So automation is displacing people. We do need to reskill workers, but if it's going to take a commitment from the individuals themselves, from companies and governments, all working together to reskill workers and also to provide the types of training that are needed. With all the young people you talked about coming online, it's going to be, jobs for me is like the number one thing that we need to deal with, and that's going to take us being thoughtful about the skills training and how we work together, because people often say, whose responsibility is it? It's everyone's responsibility.
You guys are sitting on a wealth of data there. Yes. Nina, you talked a lot about some of the innovations taking place within Africa that could be surprising for us. I wanted to ask, so if you would share some of the lessons that we can learn from some of these innovations that you've seen within Africa, and maybe if you can touch also on some of the challenges that we need to keep in mind.
Sure. I'm going to actually start at the back of your question and work it forward. And I think one of the biggest challenges that we see is probably the economic impact that we have. So when people in Africa, of any of those countries, look at anybody in the US and they're going, what is the type of cost that is involved? Or if the US is trying to sell something to them, they're giving a US price, and the USD looks great to anybody living in the USD, but suddenly when you're timesing it by 15, 20, 25, or 30, it becomes unobtainable. So be aware of that when you're speaking to them or if you're trying to do anything with them. Not all currencies are equal. There's a great report online where it says the living cost, and it actually compares the price of a loaf of bread and a Coca-Cola and things like that. And when you actually do that simple math, you actually realize why people become quiet on the other side when you're suddenly saying a unit's going to cost you $20, and they go, what? Because for them, that's basically the price what a house or a bond would be costing them per month. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges that we have. When we look at what are the type of things that are being developed there isn't a country in the world that doesn't have farmers. Okay? Yet, and the market challenges that we saw in one of the things here is real, and it's real all over. How do we see how people are coming around that? And it's not just for the sake of crates. It's a question of how are you connecting farmers to buyers to sellers? Okay? And how are we using technology to do that? We're seeing that coming about. When you look at social grants, for example, there's not a country in the world that doesn't pay type of social grants. When we see how that's been developed, how it's been rolled out, and the type of things that have been taken into consideration, you need to look at the way that problems are being approached. It's not just being approached at a singular level, it's being approached at a holistic level. And oftentimes when you're looking at how Africa approaches those problems, it's how does it improve everybody's well-being? It's not just to enrich one person. It's a question of saying the whole environment, the whole ecosystem, which we are developing or growing is uplifted. It's typical to the, when all tides rise, all boats sail higher, and that is often the way that in which you see Africa happening. You'll even see that when they develop, they may not have all the answers that you're asking for them right then. They'll go, hold on, I have a friend or I have a connection. Networking is a really, really powerful tool. And I want to add on to something that you were saying is when you're on LinkedIn and you're putting stuff out there, know that people will reach out to you and go, can you help me or can you give me advice? Be open to it. Pay it forward. Okay? Not everybody is fortunate enough, and when they've been brave enough to reach out to you, make sure you're there to help. You could be the part of the step that takes them onto a whole different pathway.
Fantastic. So Victor, I mean, we're talking about the issues of technology here. There are challenges that come with it, and there's also huge potential. Tell us a little bit about why it's important that we collaborate on this, and maybe if you can tell us a bit also about what the UN is doing around this.
Yes, I'll start with the last part of your question. I think the UN, first and foremost, is trying to support the African Union vision on all this, because the Africans are not only at the receiving end of all this. In fact, they would like to be at the table. They would like to be the deciding factor. They would like to drive this process. So the African Union has a vision for all this. And the work of the United Nations really, and the Secretary General has made a very strong commitment to that, is to support the African Union vision so that Africa will be responsible and be empowered and have the ownership of whatever they do, they decide, because in development you make choices. You can decide to put emphasis on health, or you can say no, education, or you can say agriculture. This is where I think it is important to realize, which is not always the case, even in this country, that Africa is a continent. So many countries, 54 if you add Western Sahara. So a country like the Democratic Republic of the Congo in its own is a subcontinent. In the east of the DRC, they speak Swahili. In the west and the south, they speak Lingala. Here and there, they speak French, sometimes English, or other language like Chiluba. So if you take the Congo alone, and if you make the mistake of applying a single-mind approach to that, you get it wrong. So she went to Ghana, to other countries. These countries have in common one thing. They speak English. But now, if you wanted to tap into non-English speaking countries, Portuguese-speaking countries, for instance, you realize that Mozambique has made such a progress, such a leap. Mozambique, Angola, very important countries in Africa, Guinea-Bissau, Cape Verde. If you only take Portuguese-speaking countries, you are in for a lot of surprises. Just 25 years ago, in the whole of Maputo, the capital of Mozambique, after a brutal civil war that lasted 25 years, you only had 4 cabs. One of them you could not even start, you have to push it. So 25 years later, in Mozambique, you have toll roads, and the country is looking forward. There has been such a leap in the development of communications and so on. So if you look at African countries where Arabic is spoken and so on. So you really have to see Africa as a very diverse entity. When you speak about diversity in this country, in this place, here in Harlem, well, in Africa, it's like 100 times fold. So development in this sense is an approach where you have to put the human being and the African person at the center of it. And if you were to choose who that African person will be, I'll say choose the African girl or the African woman. Why? Because in our villages, you really manage, you do not reach any useful result if you do not put it in the hands of women. They know better. You know, just to put it brutally, men are more interested in showing up and showing the girlfriends or other people that they are powerful, they have the food, they have the land and so on. But women will know how to keep that food, how to change these products into economic progress. And if you go to a country like Benin, men don't drive Mercedes-Benz in Benin. Women do. That's why they call them the Nana Benz, because they control the market. So when you go to Benin, those who control life, who control the economy, are actually the women. I recall taking a flight from Lomé and traveling up to Dakar, Senegal, through Abidjan and so on, all the capital on the west coast. Well, women will wake up in Lomé at 4 o'clock in the morning, cook rice, and cook a peanut sauce, put it on the aircraft of Air Afrique, take it to Abidjan, sell this food at 7:30 in the morning at the port, and then use that money, buy whiskey, and come back to Lomé with the whiskey and sell it that same evening on the same flight that was returning. And how will they use that money? That's their own choice. Sometimes they'll use it to buy Mercedes or to have toy boys, whatever they do. That's their choice.
You brought up a lot of points there. I mean, some of the things that I wanted to latch onto is, one is this issue of, I mean, we're talking about technology and Industry 4.0, and one issue is access, and a lot of what was happening also in the plenary discussion is about having access to technology, access to broadband, but the other thing is use. So one thing is having the access, but if you're not able to use it for things that are productive, that contribute to